Kia ora everyone, my name's Zach, I love rugby, welcome back to Hakatime Rugby. Guys, this is my preview prediction series leading up to the Rugby World Cup, and yesterday we dropped a couple of bombshells. So obviously I made a bold call predicting that France would not win the Rugby World Cup, and it's created a bit of an uproar. I think part of the reason is because all of the pundits, all of the commentary, all of the discussion has been about how tough France will be to beat at this Rugby World Cup. Obviously, home advantage, but I've just seen a number of frailties in their game, exacerbated by the injuries that we've seen. So in this video, I'm going to cover off the chances of France in a lot more detail to give you guys more insight into why I feel this way. And then the second part of the video is to cover off what I think is the top team, certainly from the Northern Hemisphere. Very much the opposite of the French team. I think it's a team that is not getting as much of the plaudits, as much of the positivity around their chances of winning, and that is the Irish Rugby team. So let's get into it, guys, and I'm going to use this game as a bit of an example on the French aspect because I just saw a number of things here that really showed me that France are going to find it quite difficult here against the bigger teams at the Rugby World Cup. So on the surface value, looking at this game, 41 points to 17, dominant performance to France. But look behind this match. The first thing is, similar score has been put on Australia, this Australia team, by both the All Blacks and the Springboks this year. We know that this is a rebuilding Australian team. We know where their lapses lie, really. So the score flatters, makes it look like it is a dominant performance, but we know that this Australia team is building. Now, when we look at the numbers, a total of 21 points scored from the boot of France versus 2 points. A 19-point swing. Now, that accounts for almost that entire margin, right? And 20% success rate is atrocious by international kicking standards. We know that Carter Gordon is a young player who has shown a number of times that he can miss, very straightforward test match level kicks. And we know the importance of building scoreboard pressure in test matches. So on the surface, this looks like a good dominant performance pre-World Cup. Underneath the covers, I actually see it as an expected result that has been replicated by a number of teams against a team that is very much building. But what is very telling is where Australia had success. So if we actually dive into the numbers a little bit, not a lot split between possession, but territory advantage to Australia. This highlights the fact that Australia were winning a number of those micro battles. We're actually a far improved team in terms of territory, but we're just not able to come away with points, whether it be because of errors or whether it be because of missed kicks, as we already discussed. Now, looking into the set pieces, another telling stat: 60% scrum success from the French, 2 failed scrums. Now, look, against the Springboks, obviously the scrum of Ireland, even against the All Blacks, who have a vastly improved scrum from the last 12 months, that is a big problem. Okay, not a lot to split between the lineouts, but you can see here that teams will identify a number of key areas that they can compete with this French team. And on the surface, what looks like a dominant performance, I actually think has worrying signs for France. Another couple of worrying signs. If we look at this first try, which I will show now, the first try that Australia scored, I should say. And we'll just run this through. Defensively, you can see here, a line is set here, 4 Australian players, Carter Gordon just hanging slightly back here in the pocket. As we move forward, the ball comes to the third man, Carter Gordon wrapping around. This still should be, in terms of numbers, defensive cohesion, this should be relatively straightforward to defend. Now, you can see here on the outside, we have Penaud and we have Jalibert. And remember, Jalibert is in inclusion now because Intermuck is out. So the defensive coordination, and Ficou has made himself, obviously, the defensive captain. But the cohesion in the defensive line is scattered here with the inclusion of Jalibert. So this will be something that the French will really need to work on, because if you look at any of the other teams, you look at Reko Ioane coming down that center channel, if that's where Jalibert is defending. You look at Andre Esterhuizen, who will definitely target that midfield. Canon Moody, obviously, with his pace. Just a number of players that can really expose any kind of undisciplined, lack of cohesive defensive structure. And if you take as well that Dante is now out, you have another player that has to slot into this cohesion. Now, ball comes out the back to Carter Gordon. As I mentioned, Penaud and Jalibert rush up, creates the numbers and the overlap, and look at all of that space for Mark Nawaqanitawase. Simple try in the end with the trailing defense unable to catch him. So that's the first example where I think defensive cohesion could be a real concern for the French. Looking at this next play, another area of that teams will be looking to expose will be under the high ball. Australia had a lot of success here with Vunivalu, with Nawangani-Tuasi, really putting in good kick chase. And we know the All Blacks have become a lot more of an exponent of that high ball kick. We know the Irish do the same, and we know the Springboks also do the same. So this is an area that France will very much be targeted. If we just run this through, ball goes up, Nawangani-Tuasi right on the spot, challenges for the ball, takes the ball, and then dishes the ball out. Now, what we see here is just go forward and momentum generated by go forward. So Carter Gordon on the front foot, off to Tom Hooper, who takes it down. Ball comes out quickly, trailing defenders, too late. And then we have Fraser McWright, who comes along and scores that try on front foot ball. So great work there from Australia. So back to this. As I mentioned, what looks like a dominant performance from France, I see defensive lapses. I see opportunity for teams with good kicking game to expose. I see opportunity for teams with good set piece to really expose this French team. I think those injuries are going to be telling. They are in key areas, as I mentioned yesterday. And at the end of the day, France still have the X-Factor player in Dupont. He is the best player in the world, and I give him that. Australia did a great job in this match of shutting him down, obviously rushing up the line. And what I found really amazing is that he was able to find other ways to contribute, other ways to be dangerous. And in particular, what I'm talking about is that crossfield kick. So the ever-dangerous Dupont, I mean, he may turn some games solely on his head, but to get through a number of big opponents in crucial games back-to-back with those kinds of lapses, I think, are a real concern for the French team. And for me, means they're not in contention, unless they fix some of those areas. But I just wanted to give you some more logic around why I suggest that France are probably not going to be the team that wins the Rugby World Cup. And now to the Irish, surprisingly flying under the radar, given the number one ranking, given the performances they've had, given they're on a 13 match win streak at the moment, given that they've beaten every team in the world. So it just surprises me. It baffles me, actually, that people are still writing off this Irish team. Without a doubt, for me, they are the number one contenders from the Northern Hemisphere. I will drop a video tomorrow on the chances of the Southern Hemisphere teams before I give my final prediction. But you have to respect the record. You have to respect what they have done here. Originally under Joe Schmidt, obviously with improving performances, and then continuation into the Andy Farrell reign. Innovation. I want to talk a little bit about that. You know, one of the first teams to really target the breakdown and target quick ball, target some of the second challenges, rather than, what we typically see at the breakdown is that players will go directly for the ball. What we're seeing more from an Irish perspective is players will hang back to then be that second inclusion into the breakdown. Often, once the collision has played out, there are opportunities to steal the ball. They play at pace. They play with width. They play a cohesive game, given the Johnny Sexton, Jemison Gibson Park axis. Really good game management. A lot of the chances rest on Johnny Sexton, as we know. He is crucial to their chances, but he is playing, and this is a swan song. So you've also got that element to this campaign that, there's a particular potential fairy tale element to their final World Cup for Johnny Sexton. Now, looking at some of the results, I thought this is a big one, because what we get a lot of the talk about is whether or not the quarterfinals will be a step too far for Ireland. We know they've famously failed at a number of quarterfinal levels, just haven't been able to get over that mental barrier. I want to highlight this as a reason why I think the Irish can take that next step towards a World Cup victory and put those mental scars to bed, largely. This is a series victory in New Zealand, okay? And we know that the All Blacks have been off the pace somewhat the last 4-year cycle. Definitely improved, and as I mentioned, I think they are right in contention for the Rugby World Cup. But to go to New Zealand, right, to drop that first game, it was very much a tour mentality as well, in that the wider squad were called upon to play midweek games, to also play in the big games. They dropped the first game at Eden Park. That was largely expected. They came out and won that second match. Now, the hardest thing to do is not just win a test series in New Zealand, but to come from 1-0 to then win 2-1 is a huge result for any team. And I think it largely puts to rest this notion that the Irish cannot win at the quarterfinal mark. right? Because if you want to go through any kind of mental scars, mental resilience, this is how you do it, right? Away from home, hostile environment, a historic tour and a historic win. So I think we actually need to put a lot of credibility on this series win, given the commentary that we're hearing around Ireland's inability to get past quarterfinal time. I think they put those mental scars to bed in this tour, and I think for that reason they have World Cup winning pedigree. If we look at some of the other results, obviously defeated South Africa, great results here last year, big win over France. That's a massive win in the context of a Rugby World Cup in France. Obviously this is at home in Ireland, but this shows the way that Ireland can defeat France, right? And it could be that they meet either the All Blacks or France in a quarterfinal. So they've got that history of beating both the All Blacks away from home and beating France in the last, let's say, 12-month cycle. So there's more than enough evidence to suggest to me that Ireland deserve the number one ranking. There's more than enough evidence for me to suggest to me that they are a team that can go and win this Rugby World Cup. Whether or not I think they are the likely winner remains to be seen. I'll cover that off in part 4 of the series, but they have to be respected. And they have the game, I think, that can really challenge any team on their day. The Irish are coming, and I think they're big contenders. I'm going to leave it there for now, guys. I'm going to drop the next video tomorrow. That'll be going through the Southern Hemisphere team's chances. I hope you enjoyed that one. Hit like if you did. Subscribe to the channel because I'm going to keep up this kind of content as we progress to the Rugby World Cup. See you guys.